Hi, Kate Gordon. Welcome to the Discussions podcast. How you doing today?
Hello, I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
It's 9:30 a.m. in Australia. You said that you slept pretty well. We like that. Is it because of your nutrition, you think?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yes. Well, that being said, I know all about you, but there might be a few listeners that do not, or they might know you just from the CrossFit athlete space. We'd love to know more about you, Kate.
Yeah, I was a coach first. So I got into CrossFit 14 years ago maybe. It was in my early 20s and I started coaching. And I was never, I never thought I was the athlete. I never thought I was good enough. I never really had, I was almost anti-competitive mindset. I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. But eventually I did get much more competitive and kind of pursued both paths, as a coach and a competitor. So I started just coaching in CrossFit gyms. Then I joined CrossFit seminar staff. And so there's a team of us who teach people that want to become CrossFit trainers. And then I started competing and competed at the games twice. And then 5 years ago, I started my own online coaching company. And I was doing fitness as well as nutrition. Now I exclusively coach nutrition online. And so that is my full time gig. I'm behind a laptop most of the time and still training and, just finding ways to enjoy it still. And some of it's CrossFitty, some of it's very much functional bodybuilding. But yeah, just, building a lifestyle that one allows me to make money and two allows me to do the things that I love.
Mm. And I love that you are trying to push this whole message of healing your relationship with food first before maybe losing weight or whatever your goal is. Can you explain a little bit about why that's so important to you?
Because it was me. The transformation that I teach is me, right? Like it's like me in my 20s, me in my teens, even. Like so many of us have got stories of starting a diet when we are 12, 13, 14, and we've been through decades of dieting. And so, really, what it is it's like, hey, whatever the behavior is that you need to change, whether it's because you're trying to lose weight, whether it's because you have unhealthy habits, you will never change the action until you change the thoughts that precede it. So much of the thinking around food is going to impact your relationship with it and the way that you eat and the actions that you're taking. So the idea of like you have to heal your relationship with food is you have to change the way you see food and your perspective around yourself and your body. So a lot of the behaviors that produce the healthy lifestyle are secondary to changing and shifting your mindset. I say mindset, and that can sometimes be a little airy fairy, but it's like the way that you think determines your results. So at the end of the day, if you think you self sabotage, if you think you're the victim of your genetics, if you think that you have to be hyper restrictive and it's not working, then like I think you got to challenge your thinking. And so the relationship that we have with food, the way that we see it, the way that we treat ourselves, the way that we respect or disrespect our bodies, like it's all going to, either point us in the direction of our goals or point us away from them. And many of us have spent years and years and years going in the opposite direction, even though our intentions are good. And so, at the end of the day, the people that I'm working with are the people who are like, I feel like I'm going around in circles. I think I'm doing the right thing, but I'm not. It's not working. So that's kind of where I come in. And the reason that I know it so thoroughly is because it's me. It's me, in my 20s and now in my 30s, I'm in a totally different space, but there's still things that you wrestle with on a day-to-day basis. And I think I really am intrigued by the concept of food noise that is kind of part of the Ozempic marketing right now. Ozempic, the weight loss medication for anyone who's not familiar, right? Like
Yes.
food noise is kind of floating around with Ozempic, and even Weight Watchers have been kind of like attaching to that term. And it's a bit of a, like, it's kind of got a negative connotation where it's like you have to think about food all the time and it's this noise and we're constantly overthinking and worrying and anxious about it. And I had this really big wake up call a couple of years ago where I was like, it doesn't matter how you eat, you have to think about food. So whether you're on the diet or off the diet, you are still thinking about food. So we actually almost need to accept that food is forever. We have to think about food. We're constantly going to make decisions. So let's not beat ourselves up in the process and think that it's a bad thing. Let's recognize that, like, no, we have to just figure out a system to make decisions and be happy with those decisions because they align with our values, they align with our goals, and they align with the kind of person that we're trying to be.
I love that. And I'd love to know more because you said that person was me. What was your relationship with food in your 20s? And what is currently your relationship with food in your 30s? And I ask because I'm also in my 30s and there's been quite a change. And I would say evolution, but constantly dealing with certain things as well. So there's a constant in there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your relationship with food evolution?
So Kate in my teens was just don't eat and then figure it out. I remember my first diet was like fast for a day, effectively. I was intermittent fasting, I guess. Fast for a day, don't eat, and then eat alternate days. I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't even know why I thought I needed to lose weight. I think so much of the messaging on magazines and in TV shows was like how to lose those pesky pounds or, stubborn belly fat and how to lose 5 kilos. So it wasn't that, any of the messaging was like you're fat. It was just that it was inherently understood that you needed to lose weight. And that was what I interpreted as like, oh, that will fix my problem. I don't know what my problem is, but that will fix my problem. And I'm just like an insecure teenager, who's like going through the not only the physical but also the emotional growing pains of like puberty and suddenly I have boobs and like your body changes. I wish someone was just like,
Scary.
hey, you're gonna go through puberty and you will gain weight. That's part of it. Like price of admission to being an adult, you get bigger. So
Yeah.
I had these like kind of wild diets that I did, and then I remember one of my second kind of interactions with food was seeing a personal trainer, and I would go along with my stepmom, and it was a good exposure to fitness, and I really appreciated that. But the food thing was I would have to write my food in a journal, and I would get ticks and crosses. And I
Mhm.
just suddenly was really attached to like I failed, like I did something wrong. And so if I ever ate bad food, I was like, I have to hide it. I should feel ashamed. This is naughty. This is a cross. This is really bad. And now I've got too many crosses and I can't fix this. So there was a lot of like, oh no, I've done something bad and I'm a bad person or I'm a failure. And so I'll hide it. And then I entered, like, once I found CrossFit, there's quite an interesting evolution that happens because I got into CrossFit because I wanted to lose weight. Like, that was, the reality for a lot of people that get into fitness. You're like, I want to be skinny or I want to be leaner or I want to look this way. And then suddenly I was like, oh no, I really want to lift more weight or I want to perform well or I want to, like, improve at training or whatever it was. So I started to change my approach. But I still was kind of wrestling a little bit with food. I did the paleo diet, I did the zone diet. I was certainly trying to eat for performance a little bit more, but those diets really failed me. Paleo diet is no carbs. Well, I shouldn't say no carbs. It's no grains. It's cutting out certain food groups. It's fairly restrictive. And again, very much good food, bad food. And the zone diet is extremely low calories. It is a weight loss diet and it is extremely low calories. So again, it was just these very restrictive diets that even though I was trying to be healthy, they were just the wrong vehicles for what I needed as a
Mhm.
20-year-old doing a shit ton of CrossFit. And I eventually found a coach, and unfortunately, it was not a great coach. I was put on very low calories. I was training twice a day. This is actually after I'd already competed at the games once as well. So at that point, I was officially competitive
Wow.
and put on like 1,700 calories and just ended up sticking with it as best I could. But then I would binge. So I would do well for a few weeks, even a couple months at first, and then I would overeat, and then I would have my calories cut again because I'd overeaten, and so I'd gained weight, and it just became this thing around weight. So that was kind of like, I would say that that was the beginning of my binge eating peaking. Um, Through that point, I lost my period. I didn't have a period for 3 months, and then it took another 3 months for it to get to normal. I lost 5 kilos, but then I gained 10 kilos. I had terrible hormonal acne, and this is when I'm like 28, 29.
Yeah.
And just kind of like in this weird place of I thought I was doing the right thing. Like I got a coach, I was trying to fix it. I eventually left that coach, thank God. I was such an emotional wreck in training. I was so up and down. I was like, like I wish that I'd connected earlier that a lot of my emotional dysregulation was because I was hungry and under eating. I
Yeah.
wish that I'd realized that, but it took a long time. And it was a buddy of mine, a training partner and mentor that was like, you are a roller coaster in training. Like you need to look at your food. And so I finally found a new coach, and I was so scared to eat more food. I was so scared because I was lean. I was the leanest I've ever been. Like, it was crazy how lean I was. I was a shred dog, you know. I was like, this is
So
great.
you
I feel
liked what you
awful.
looked like.
Yeah, I feel awful, but like, how do I keep this? And I was like, it didn't work. So I gained 10 kilos. I got to my heaviest, and I eventually did eat more food. And I was, tracking calories for probably at this point 3 or 4 years. And I was like, I think I need to stop tracking. Like, I think I need to remove the restriction. And again, so scared of eating more, so scared of the
Yeah.
weight gain. I was already gaining weight. I think my skin and my period being a mess really woke me up to like, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
about your weight. You need to fix your health. Like, that becomes, the top priority. So that was kind of in a way a good thing, because it really made me just go, no, fuck the scales, just fix this. And so I kind of
Yeah.
got on top of that. And then I was like, the relationship with food is never going to fix itself if I keep repeating this dieting pattern. Like, I keep trying to start tracking and eat less and do a diet and do a cut and lean up for a competition or whatever it was. And I was like, and then I would eat more again and I would gain it back, and then I have to lean
Yeah.
up again. And I was like, I keep on just going in this again, a circle. So I, really kind of got to this fork in the road where I was like, well, I could do another diet and just keep repeating this pattern, or I could stop dieting and actually fix my relationship with food. And I'd started to kind of come into more and more just information about binge eating. And a lot of people will resonate with feeling like you've got an eating disorder, but it's not a bad one. Like, I wasn't anorexic, I
Mm.
wasn't bulimic. I definitely was eating in a way that I felt really in my head about, and it was just a minefield of like confusion and frustration and disappointment as well. But I was like, I don't think I need to get therapy for this, but I know something's not working. But
Mm.
it was just like, you're kind of in this gray area. And when I saw a lot of people talking about binge eating, I was like, oh, I think that's me. That's me. And the second that I identified as a binge eater, it really helped me kind of put myself into a category of like, I need to fix my disordered eating. I don't need to, like, I didn't feel like I needed to get therapy, and maybe I could have, and it could have been helpful, but I just kind of suddenly went, no, I need to stop dieting and I need to fix my relationship with food at whatever cost. If I have to gain weight, if I whatever eat too much, like, I need to work through this. So I stopped tracking. It lasted a month. And then I was like, I'm healed. I'm good. And then I started tracking again. Actually, I was just terrified. And I tracked again for 3 months, and the same patterns crept back in. And I was like,
Mm.
all right, I'm done. And so then I spent a year just not tracking and just letting myself figure out my eating. And what I realized is, if you've started dieting from 13 or 14 and you've been on and off diets and you've been on that rotation of like, I'll try, I tried the Dukan diet, I tried the South Beach diet, I tried
Mm.
paleo, did the zone thing, I did the macros thing, I cut my calories, I ate more, I ate less. It's like, I never spent time eating to be healthy. I'd never done that. And so when I stopped tracking and I was addressing my hormones and my skin and my period, it was the first time that I was eating to really nourish my body, and I wasn't worrying about calories. And so food became
Mm.
nourishment instead of calories. And it was like, oh, I don't know how to eat. Oh, wow, I actually have to really learn how to be healthy. I literally have no idea how to eat without calories or a diet telling me how much to eat
Yeah.
purely for the sake of controlling my body composition or my aesthetics. And so that whole year was like, a game changer. And then when I got back into, I did start tracking my food eventually, and it was purely to make sure I was eating enough for competing. So then it was kind of the
Yeah.
flip of, no, I just want to make sure, again, I'm eating enough. And so I was eating more carbohydrates with training. I was making sure I was hitting my protein. I was eating enough fiber. So that it became like this real shift in just the way that I was looking at food. And it was the best thing I could have done. And it took time. And, that's what I teach. I'm like, dude, if you've been dieting for like 10 years, maybe more, some people I work with, it's like 20 to 30 years. It's not fixed in a 12-week weight loss program. It's just
Yeah.
not. And like, I can help you lose weight, but I need you to be on board with the whole system. And it's potentially 9 to 12 months. So and I'm literally setting up and launching my course right now. We start this weekend. And I'm like, you can't be on board just for the, short weight loss phase that we're doing. This is a complete program because if you're like
Yeah.
me and you've been dieting since you were really young, I need to reteach you how to eat. And so that's part of the
Hmm.
program. It's like, let me establish the habits. Let's establish a healthy way of eating where you understand food, what the benefits are, why you're eating those things. You're eating food for the nutrients it provides your body, and you're not thinking about calories. You're just thinking about how can I be a healthy human. Then we
Yeah.
can layer in a calorie deficit if needed, if that's even something that you actually want at that point. So many people address their eating and suddenly they're like, oh no, I feel really good. I'm actually leaning out. Like I feel like this is so sustainable and I just feel so relaxed with food. But if we do a weight loss phase, I will typically bring tracking in. So I'm in one right now, and tracking has never been easier now. It's just so relaxed, and I'm so like whatever about it. So it's much more sustainable. I don't get caught up in my head around food. I do notice that just naturally restriction makes me want food that I'm trying to not eat. So there's definitely little elements of those thoughts that creep in, but I'm so self-aware with that stuff now, just from having worked through it. It's like you become very good at observing the old parts of your brain that are still there as a bit of a,
Hmm.
hanging about in the corners. I call them like my inner mean girl or my inner Karen or my inner like crazy agent. There's like these different parts of my brain that are just like, oh, maybe you should go and eat a whole lot of chocolate. And oh, you ate chocolate, you're bad. Like you maybe you should just go get takeouts. It's like that's still there.
Yeah.
But it's like there's a stronger voice now that's like, hey, 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 chill out. What does your body need right now? Like what do you actually need right now? So yeah,
Hmm.
so that is a very long journey that I've been on over the past, 20 years, I guess now. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's so easy to relate to people because we've all been in this struggle or a version of it. And if there's one thing that coaching people has taught me, and I'm sure for you as well, you're like, oh, we're all suffering. We're
Yeah.
all insecure. Oh, we're all feeling frustrated. Oh, we're all impatient about our body changing. Oh, we're all restricting, but then causing shitty relationships with food. Like, oh, we're all doing the same thing. So we all just need to learn how to be healthy. Like that's kind of the missing element in the diet industry, right?
Yeah.
Like I can teach you how to
Yeah.
lose weight, but oh, you need to just eat to be healthy. Yeah, I can't teach you that.
Yeah. And the whole premise of the Discussions podcast, to be honest, is showing that we're all winging it.
Mm,
We're You're saying we're all suffering, we're all trying to figure stuff out. It's the same thing in life. We're all winging it. It's just everyone thinks that everyone else is doing such a good job in controlling everything. But I like the fact that you're very much like, no, we're all having issues with this. And our paths, I wouldn't say are very, very similar, but they are to a certain degree. I mean, there's a lot of things that I see within your three chapters of life, the teens, the 20s, the 30s that I saw in mine, minus the CrossFit games, unfortunately. But I remember as a teen, weighing myself a lot because of the magazines, because of like, wanting to look like Christina Aguilera or Britney Spears,
mhm.
etc. And I remember weighing myself and I was like around 75 kilos. That was just normal. And then in my 20s, always around 80s, and now I'm at 87 right now. And I know you mentioned how you loved the way you looked, you were lean, before having to sort of shift your mindset and think about eating more. And then you added 10 kilos. So what number were you at, if you're comfortable with sharing that? And also, how did that make you feel?
So I actually don't really know what I would have been sitting at naturally with my weight. I think I was naturally sitting around 72 kilos, 73 kilos, which is about 175 pounds. And I dropped down to under 70 kilos. I think I hit 69, which for an athlete that's already lean, like that was a really significant drop in weight in a very short
Yeah.
period of time. And then over the kind of the next 6 months, I hit 80 kilos. So I
Mm.
moved up from 69 to 80 kilos, which is about 185 pounds. And the interesting thing about it is you can often feel it, but I didn't look that different, to be honest. Like I can see it in photos and I'm like, oh yeah, I was definitely like, I had a little bit more like fat around my face and a little bit more around my legs and my stomach, but it really it wasn't major. And the ironic thing was I was my most competitive in the CrossFit Open that year. I finished 16th in Australasia. So
Mm.
Asia, Australia, New Zealand, it's like in the open, which is typically the most, I guess, cardio intensive part of competition.
Yep.
And I was like, what's going on? And so that
Mm.
really massively challenged this idea that I had that I needed to be lean or slim to be competitive. And what it kind of clicked for me. So, I thought it was going to be all negative feelings about like, I'm bigger, I've gained weight, like da da da. But it was only positive because the fears that I had were not based in reality. They were based in assumptions around my insecurities. And what happened when I realized that I was performing better when I was bigger was that it was like, okay, no, like
Uh-huh.
it was all bullshit. Like it was all just this, I was just afraid. And so then what I'd spun as a story in my head in order to validate weight loss was that it was for performance. And so when I connected that dot, I was like, oh, I've just been using that as an excuse, but I actually do not need to be lean for weight loss. For performance, what I needed was to be strong, to have energy, to recover like an absolute champ, to feel good in training, to not be an emotional wreck, to mentally be at my like top of my game, and to show up and train hard. Like that was what I needed, and you need to eat. Like I love looking at athletes now, like Annie Thorisdottir, Laura Horvath, like just some of those, like even Danny Spiegel, like they're lean, but they're big athletes. They weigh kilos and pounds. Like, they're not.
Mhm.
Tia Claire is kind of like the exception. She is extremely small and lean. But I love looking, and I deliberately now do expose myself to the athletes that are bigger athletes that perform incredibly. Because, how can you argue that you have to be lean when you've got like a massively diverse, representation of bodies on the field at the top level of competition, at least with regards to CrossFit. And then, there were a bunch of videos that came out after the Olympics, right, as well, of all these like female athletes. And it's like,
Yes.
the whole idea of like, you got to be skinny to perform or you got to be lean to perform. I'm like, if you're a marathon runner, maybe that's probably it. Like, you would lose a shit ton of weight, but look at them. Like, they are sticks. I'm like, they're
Yeah.
not healthy. That's a whole different sport, right? Like, I think in CrossFit and in life, health is having fat. Like, women need fat on their bodies.
Yes.
And on top of that, obviously being an athlete and being able to eat food and recover properly and feel good in training, that tops anything. Like my body composition cannot compare to feeling good in order to train hard and get results.
Hmm. And I'm going to start asking some tough questions right now. And these are questions that I ask myself. And sometimes I actually have a hard time coming up with the answer because I feel like I can argue one way or the other. So the first one is whether you think that the body positivity movement is problematic.
I do and I don't. I
Exactly.
it's like I believe that, anyone who's online, anyone who's a coach, like we're all validating our own behaviors and practices, right? Like the thing I'm selling is the thing that I'm doing. And so the way that I speak is a great way to justify what I do. And when I was in a bigger body, I was often justifying how people should all accept their bodies. And now that I'm back in a more disciplined weight loss phase, I'm like, you got to be disciplined. It's like, it's purely a reflection of where I'm at. And I 100% believe that that is true for everyone. So I think people that
Mhm.
are figuring out and navigating life in a bigger body want to be accepted. And so they preach acceptance. And that makes sense. And everyone should be accepted in their body because your worth and your body are not attached, right? They're not mutually exclusive. My
Mhm.
problem with a lot of the body acceptance and the, self-love, the like healthy at every size, like just a lot of that movement, I think it's often misinterpreted. And I say misinterpreted because I don't believe that it's the foundational message that they're trying to get across. But I think people understand it as you should love your body, whether it's big, whether it's small, whether it's round, whether it's square, whether it's, whatever. And to be honest, loving your body for how it looks and hating your body for how it looks are two sides of the same coin. It is the same
Mhm.
practice. We still are trying to find worth and value in how we look. And to me, I'm like, dude, no, you have to just be like radically accepting of this vessel, this body, this container that you've got for life. It's the one body that you get. And so whether you love it or hate it actually is irrelevant. it is irrelevant because you cannot do anything about it except for be in it. It's like, this is
Yeah.
what you get, man. This is it. So I think the body acceptance thing, to me, I get frustrated and I also appreciate it because I think so many of us struggle with our bodies because we are constantly rejecting it and trying to change it. And so a huge amount of, I guess, it's almost like we can make a lot of progress by by being okay with our body, like just allowing it to be as it is. Like there's so much mental energy and mental load that can be dumped when you are okay with your body, like when you are truly at peace with the body that you've got. And I really like the phrase, like, accept the body that you've got in this moment and repeat until forever. Like, just really,
Mm.
really live into that, like be in that. And if you can do that, you're going to be okay. And if you can't do that, your body is still your body, but you just suffer unnecessarily. You suffer for no reason except that you think that something's wrong because that's how you perceive it. So for me, I'm like, look, there's so much that can come from accepting your body and truly just being like, dude, this is it. This is what I'm working with. I'm cool with that. I want to be healthy. I want to feel good. And like, that's kind of what I want. While at the same time, I do believe that, one, it's okay to want to lose weight, and people can. I'm pursuing weight loss right now. That's totally okay. I think it's obvious that you feel good when you're lean and you're in shape, and I feel really like good in the gym, and I love wearing my clothes. So I think that's a positive thing to experience. Can it be taken too far? Of course, but it doesn't inherently mean it's a bad thing. I also think that the second thing I was going to say was, where was I going? I think that people need to. So first thing was, it's okay to lose weight, and then the second thing was, you probably would be healthier for people that have got a lot of weight to lose. So I think the idea of, like, discarding the obvious correlations that we have between having a lot of fat on your body and chronic disease or inflammation or problems, I think assuming that that's all false and that that can be explained somehow, or like almost it's a myth. I'm like, dude, there's way too much science for that. Like, no, we need to fix our eating. We need to eat whole foods. You need to be lean. You need to be fit. You need to be athletic. You need to have muscle. And having a whole lot of fat on your body is the opposite to those things. So I think the argument of like, no, you're healthy at any size. I'm like, you're healthy at a lot of sizes, but not any size. So
Mm.
again, it's like you said, it's both. It's yes and, not either or, and there's nuance with it. But yeah, I'm a big proponent for, like, dude, the body positivity thing. I'm like, I'm not on board with that. Body acceptance, absolutely. Can you lose weight if you want to lose weight? Totally, you can. Is everybody who's overweight, can they also be healthy? It's not everybody. So yeah, there's a little bit of that kind of discussion that probably has to happen.
Yeah, and you see in mainstream culture a lot, and this is where, I struggle with it is, for example, Lizzo. She's beautiful. All right. Like, I'm not going to take that away from her. And I love that she's out there and she's giving people who are bigger just someone to look up to, just in terms of, hey, someone who looks like me is making it in life, and she doesn't care that maybe critics are talking about her being overweight, etc. Some people use her and the fact that she likes to post videos of herself just like eating a bunch of food, rubbing her belly, being like, I can do whatever I want to do. I just love my body. Some people say that that actually pushes people to maybe accept unhealthy habits, right? So it's these sort of things that just make me think. I love the body positivity movement, but like you said, I'm leaning more towards it being actually body neutrality, like maybe being super neutral about your body. Like, I feel like the less, like you said, the less you think about your body, the more energy you have, like maybe for something else. So I agree with that. And I see like two sides of the coin. And I'm just like, I like to think that, yes, it comes down to health. If you're healthy, you're healthy, right? You can be skinny or, overweight. If you're healthy, you're healthy. But then again, people will say, well, what's healthy,
Mm.
right? Some people will talk about BMI, which I think is absolute bullshit, right? And then you talk about different things, like maybe is it your blood pressure? Is it, your hormones? Are they balanced? It's such a wide, it's such a hard subject. And I think it touches on people's emotions so much that it makes it even harder to discuss it in a very calm way
Mm.
with anyone, right? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Lizzo example is so good because I know her, I know people like Adele. If they pursue weight loss, they have people attack them.
Mm.
And to me, it's like, so you're only going to accept them if their body looks a certain way. It is the same problem. It's like what we should allow people to do is whatever they want, first of all. And
Yeah.
two, I think that if somebody pursues weight loss and they're in a bigger body and you've resonated with that, you've connected, you feel like there's representation, you're like, yes, someone looks like me, and they decide to change the way they look, that does not mean that they are shitting on your body, right? Like, I think that
Mm.
that's where some of the attacks have come from, where it's like, oh, Adele was embracing her bigger body. Now she's losing weight and she thinks bigger bodies are bad. It's like, no, that's you projecting your own insecurities. And that's okay. Like,
Correct.
that's okay to feel
Mhm.
a little defensive and a little scared and fearful and insecure in your body. Like we all do, whether you're a Kardashian or whether you're Lizzo or Adele, like, or you're just a regular person. But I think this idea of like, if someone changes their body, that means that they are rejecting the body that I connect with them in. And I think that that is wrong. I think that's totally incorrect. And I think we do that
Mm.
in everywhere in the media, where if someone says, I'm going to do this, people interpret it as, I don't like that. It's like, I love
Yeah.
bananas. And someone's like, well, what about oranges? That's so rude. How banana elitist of you. And it's like, no, I just really like bananas. Like, I'll also eat oranges, right? So I think that there's definitely like a lot of like reading between the lines where people are actually just
Yeah.
pouring their meaning into what other people are doing about their lives and about their bodies and about their nutrition.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a bit of a hot mess out there sometimes, but
Yes.
I find it, frustrating that the same people that want us to accept our bodies and love a bigger body then will beat up the person that says, I want to go and do something with my body that helps me, makes me feel
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I find that very conflicting.
Agreed. And now I'm going to take it on the flip side. Do you think that fitness culture is toxic?
Yeah, I think there are definitely elements of fitness culture, like fitness industry, diet industry. I mean, you'd find pockets of it everywhere. I think there's so many people that are so hung up on little things, like the macro counters, right? Like perfect example. I've just worked with an amazing client who had tracked her macros every single day for 2,271 days or something. And she was like, I can't not track. And then even when she stopped tracking, she was logging into the app. Like that is the degree to which we're afraid to let go. But it comes from the same
Mm.
place. It's fear and it's control. And so these, behaviors that we have either express themselves as, well, I don't like my body and I'm just going to resign myself to the fact and I'm just going to rebel and not care. And that's kind of like that's a method of control. And then there's the control of like, okay, well, I don't like my body. I'm going to control everything that I eat and I'm going to become like pedantic around food. So I think that it's an expression of the same underlying insecurity. It just looks a little different. But yeah, I think that absolutely happens in the diet and fitness industry. And like, I think we just make something that can be quite simple very complicated. And then, of course, what you throw in the mix is money. So people will profit in this industry, and that's, everything from weight loss to supplements to medication to apparel and, influences. Like there's money to be made in this industry, and what we profit off is effectively marketing people's insecurities. So, one of the reasons I do not like using before and after photos is for that reason. It's a snapshot of someone else's journey that will not look the same to you. You do not understand their
Mm.
story. You don't know what they've done. You don't know what happened afterwards either. So for me, the before and after photos are great in terms of marketing because they grab someone's attention. You're essentially hooking their insecurities and showing them a possibility or a promise that they want. So it's kind of like, I want that change. I can see that for myself, but you're also there then promising something that you will never be able to potentially deliver on. It's a false promise. It's marketing at its greatest. It's like it sells you the dream.
Mm.
And so I feel very frustrated. And again, it's like, it's so effective though. And so it's hard for me not to use it. It's like, man, if I talk to any like business coach or a mentor, they'll be like, you need to be using before and after photos or content that shows social proof. I'll use some of
Mhm.
my own before and afters, but I don't typically use my clients. And even using my own, I get really like, oh, it feels greasy to me. It's like the car salesman. I'm just like, oh, I know it's just an easy sell. But yeah, so I think it's the same thing. It's like you throw money in the mix and it becomes dangerous.
Completely. I could not agree more with regards to looking at the fitness industry as a business and a money-making machine. That is very, very different to what is healthy on a science level, right? Because in fitness, it's all about clickbait. And for me, clickbait includes the before and after pictures, right? Like it's all about that. And that's how people make a name for themselves, like with different reels and like shocking things, like, it works and I completely get it. But I think as your average person won't see the two different things. They won't see the business and the science.
Hmm.
They'll only see the business because that's what's blaring and that's what's the only thing you see when you pick up your phone. So I like the fact that you touch on the fact that, hey, it's two separate things. So I do believe that in a sense, fitness culture is toxic. But I like to think and I hope that with what I do, I'm really trying to sort of push the science stuff. Like this is what's backed by science, like putting on muscle mass, when it comes to regulating your hormones, this is how you should eat, as opposed to saying, oh, do this to lose weight.
Hmm.
Right. And then most of it will be like, lose weight in 6 weeks. Yeah. How? Ask that person after the 6 weeks what they look like and how they feel about their body, because they've just put on all the weight and maybe a bit a bit more. So it's I have a hard time. Again, these questions are kind of tough. And the next one, I don't know if I can if this is the right word to use. Let me know if you don't agree with it. But do you think to a certain degree that as humans we abuse our bodies?
Um, I think humans, do we abuse our bodies?
Like, let's say through dieting, through use of steroids, through use of weight loss drugs like Ozempic, are we abusing our bodies?
I would almost argue that you could probably look at someone and say, yes, they're abusing their body. But I could never imagine that someone who's making a choice, whether it's for aesthetics, performance, or whatever their goals are, would be intentionally abusing them, or in a sense, almost like that self harm or punishment. Um, I think what most of us are trying to do is feel good. And what feeling good often is, you know, the vehicle for that is I have to like how I look, or I have to control this thing. I'm trying not to feel insecure. I'm trying to, feel accepted and feel loved. And so whatever means we can accomplish that through, we will do it. And if that's pharmaceuticals, if that's, steroids, if that's whatever it is, I don't know if it's that we're abusing our bodies. I think the intention is I just want to feel good. Now, with regards to taking like kind of additional things and putting them in our body, is all of it good for us? Absolutely not. I mean, it's like it's all kind of in the same category though. It's like there's sugar, there's alcohol, there's performance enhancing drugs, there's weight loss medication. It's like there's a whole lot of that stuff where you could actually still be healthy and incorporate some of that in, and you'd probably be fine. I've had a really great, interesting conversations with Dr. Tina about Ozempic. Very low dose Ozempic is showing great health benefits. And I think that, it's something that's really interesting. Same thing with hormone replacement therapy or testosterone or estrogen. It's like there are benefits from that. But I think that we kind of maybe take it too far. And I think that's, kind of natural human instinct or behavior. It's like you just want more and more of it. And it's the same thing that happens with like sugar and alcohol. I think that you can absolutely abuse those things. But does that mean that by just taking it, you're abusing your body? No, I think that there has to
Mhm.
be some kind of almost crossover that happens. So, yeah, interesting question. I think I guess there's a bit of an argument that you could say that there's abuse happening. Do I think someone's actually deliberately trying to abuse their body? Do I think that even like the medical or the diet industry are out here trying to create, people that abuse themselves? Like, no, I don't think that's true. But I just think that the way that we actually use something, perhaps there'd be different categories for the way that, we eventually end up taking advantage of something or not.
So how would you define the act of doing something that you know harms your body?
I guess it would be like if you've got evidence that you don't feel good, then to me, I'm like, so then why keep doing it? Or, yeah, I guess it's sort of like like I guess if I think about from my experiences with people, like a lot of like the people that I'm working with, it's like I know you're talking about, maybe things like medication or steroids, but if we kind of take it back a notch and think about people that are potentially, abusing food, right? Let's just kind of start with food. I feel
Let's
like,
say too much sugar,
yeah, like too much
right?
overeating, too much sugar, too much like processed food, like any of that stuff, like too much eating out, like just overeating in general. I think you could probably talk to someone and they could probably tell you that they don't feel good afterwards, but yet they continue to do it. And so to
Mm.
me, I'm like, so then what's the disconnect here? Like, if you have plenty of evidence that it is not making you feel good, but you continue to do it, then why are you doing it? Because you're getting something out of that. Like you're getting something, it's serving you in some way, in the way that, I really like the idea that our bad habits serve us somehow, like they do something for us. So even
Mm.
people that smoke, like you get to go out for 5 minutes and get away from things and stand still and be away from people and breathe. And I know you're breathing fucking nicotine, but you're breathing, right? Nicotine and toxins. But you're like, you get to step away from things and chill out and just be on your own. Maybe talk to a stranger. Like, there's actually quite an interesting thing that comes out of that habit. And so I think that that's how it serves people. And yeah, I guess to me, there's this really difficult experience in the bad habits because they do good things for us in a way. They make us either feel good, they help us avoid things, they help us either, deflect or numb out sometimes, they replace bad
Mhm.
emotions with instant gratification. So there's like, I would say that some of the things that we would look at that I would say, hey, dude, that's ultimately not making you feel good, and you're sacrificing your long-term health, you're sacrificing your goals for this thing, I think in the immediate actually makes people feel quite good. So I think that, what I'm trying to define for you becomes really difficult to define because
Yeah.
what feels good in the moment can be terrible for you long term, and you'd say that's abuse.
Hmm.
But in the
Yeah.
immediate moment, in the present, you're like, no, but this feels good. And so then
Yeah.
the flip
Yeah.
of this becomes really tricky because to get the thing that makes you feel good later on, it will often feel wrong in the moment. So the things that
Mm.
are bad for us long term feel good in the present moment. The
It's
things
so
that are
true.
good for us long term will typically feel bad in the moment. So you'll have a lot of people that want to change their behavior and change their lifestyle. And they're like, it feels awful. Like I'm so resistant to this. I don't want to do this. I want to keep eating out. I want to keep smoking. I want to keep doing like whatever drugs help me lose weight because it feels so fucking hard and it feels miserable. And I feel like I have to sacrifice all this stuff for what I get later on. So there's this really bad weird like your wires have to get crossed in order for you to have success because you have to be okay with suffering in the moment, and it's short term, it's not long term, but you have to suffer to get the benefits
Hmm.
from it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I know that didn't quite answer your question, but
Because
it's
it's
a
a
very
hard one to
complicated. Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like even just using the word abuse, it's you have a different idea of what abuse would be, but then when you scale it back and you're like, but that's true. Even if we take it back to food, like you said, like you know that eating this much sugar is bad for you, yet you're still doing it.
Mm.
What is that? Right? And so I like the nuances that you're bringing into it because it's true. Like it's not black or white. But when I thought, I thought about this in terms of defining and why are we doing things to our bodies that we know are bad? Why? Right? If the whole point, the whole way we are wired and we have been for centuries, is survival. Why now do we keep doing things that are not good for us? Why? Is it because we can and we're getting away with it, right? To a certain extent. You can eat a certain way for years, still be okay.
Mm.
And later on, oh, I got fireworks. Did you see that? There were fireworks.
It really mic drop moment.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can get away with it for so long now because medicine is so advanced, right? And we're living longer, etc. And we're constantly bombarded with so much food, and we're even picking up the phone, right? Being on your phone all the time. We know it's bad. It's bad for a million reasons, including your posture, but you still do it, right? It's all these things, and we're getting away with doing bad things to our bodies, to our minds. But why is it that we are doing this now and we're allowing it? I'm sure years ago when we were, just evolving and living in forests, and all you had to do was hunt and gather, and create a family and survive. What is it that they were doing that was bad for them?
I
I
think
don't
that
know.
the interesting thing like that you kind of raise is it's like thinking about our predecessors and ancestors and like what was their lifestyle and what did they have different. And the wild environment that we are existing in and like the year 2024, humankind has never had so much food available to them at their fingertips. It's like, and information and, basically dopamine rewards, right? So I just think purely on the level of just like this massive abundance of food that we've never experienced before with brains that are still the same brains that we had millennia ago. So, you think about the limbic system in the brain, and I really like getting into this stuff. The oldest part of our brain is hardwired for survival. And so there's a really cool concept called the motivational triad. And the motivational triad is essentially our mechanism for survival. And so we essentially pursue maximum pleasure for minimum risk of pain and minimum expenditure of energy. So it's like the lowest effort for the most reward with the least risk of like pain. I don't want to suffer. I just want to get what I want. Like that is top of the list for us surviving, whenever we were back in our caveman days. So it's like that was smart. We would make smart choices because of that. Now that served us well in that environment, but you put that same system, that same motivational triad that just wants to like maximize pleasure, minimize pain, and decrease the effort. You put that in 2024 with someone who's got Uber Eats and Netflix in front of them, like, dude, obviously we're in
Yeah.
trouble. We're in big trouble because the brain still gets rewarded for those things. So now, in order to be healthy, we have to kind of understand that, like, be conscious of like, it's an easy decision to make because it is what the body wants. Like the body gets calories, which is great for survival. The body doesn't have to work for it, doesn't have to use energy, and there's no risk of pain. There's no suffering. So it's like that makes those decisions like you can't even compare any other choice to it because everything else relative to that is hard. And so then what we talked about earlier where like doing the right thing feels hard, it's because it does. It's because we're kind of having to reverse engineer a lot of programming that's deeply ingrained in us, and we have to recognize that we have to pursue delayed gratification in order to be healthy human beings. And so I love the idea of like getting used to having food in the house that can be foods that you can't stop eating. But I also draw a line at like, there's still foods that I don't keep in the house. Like, I just know that, like the hungry brain is, is not, it's a beast.
I know.
And it's like if it's
I
there,
know.
it's like it's so hard to not eat that food. Some people can, but a lot of us can't. And so I think, trying to deny that and override that system, it's like I just don't think it's possible. So you have to in the environment that we're in, the broader environment, you have to find a way to create a more intimate environment for yourself within your house, within your work, within the places that you're spending time that supports your goals. And if you set up the environment well, then the system works. Then the system is
Mhm.
functional. It's that we're in an environment that completely, well, technically works with the system, but fails us because of what's available that we've never had available to us before. So,
Mhm.
in the previous times where food was scarce, it made sense. In modern times when food is abundant, it's very hard to then make decisions around food because we've got so many options that are delicious and easy to get. So I think you've got
Yeah.
to find that balance of like, you got to create an environment. And then to overcome a lot of that dieting mindset and a lot of that restriction, you still have to incorporate and embrace the joyful food that is available to us. And there still has to be an element
Mhm.
of permission. So that's often the tricky thing that I'm trying to balance with myself and with the people that I'm working with. It's like, how do I get you to eat well, seek delayed gratification, have whole foods, and learn to function really optimally on those things? But then also not be crazy restrictive. And like you mentioned, it's like the fitness and diet industry, they do take it to extremes, and that produces problems in the same way that maybe body acceptance does. So I think
Yeah.
it's finding this really tricky kind of magical sweet spot of like permission and being okay with eating food and operating from this place of like I can eat whatever I want whenever I want, but also practicing healthy constraints. And so a
Mhm.
really big part of what's happened for me in the last few years has been, I as I was overcoming the binge eating, I was all permission. I was like, eat what you want, like just eat the chocolate, like eat the thing. And I still lean into that, but I'm a really big believer of healthy constraints because of the environment that we're in. And you
Yeah.
will live your life having to have some degree of restriction to be a healthy person and to feel good. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing. And so I think, the anti-diet movement really kind of brought in this idea that like any diet and any restriction is bad. And I'm like, well, no, I don't believe it is. I think that knowing what we know about the brain and how we operate and how we're motivated, it's like it's probably pretty smart to have some healthy constraints and to feel good with it. And ultimately in the end, I think what if I can get someone to enjoy the discipline, if I can get someone to enjoy doing hard things, that person is going to do well. If I have someone
Yeah.
that hates doing hard things the whole time and is just doing it for weight loss or whatever the goal is, I'm like, it's not going to last. You have to learn to essentially, the process has to become the reward. And I wake up every day and I have a couple of little goals. I want to drink enough water. I want to have protein at every meal. I want to eat whole foods and like eat lots of vegetables. It's like that's a daily process of like I'm thinking about food, I'm putting in effort. I love being to a degree restricted and disciplined because it makes me feel fucking great. Like I feel like a badass. I'm the hero in my action movie rather than the victim in a soap opera drama. Like I choose that path.
Yeah.
We're in the same circumstance, but I'm choosing to show up and be like, you know what, despite everything working against me, I'm just going to try. And so I think
Yeah.
you kind of got to establish that. And, you got a brain and an environment that's potentially working against you, but that's okay. That's part of it. That's what's going to make you better because you're going to learn how to navigate that stuff.
Mm. That's why I love sports so much. I think it teaches us life lessons
God, yeah.
that not everything is just a given, that you have to work hard for it, but also there will be times where you second guess yourself, where something is super hard, you can't get through it, you have to try again. I think it mimics life in a sense. And that's why, my consulting firm is called Growth to Mindset. It's having that mindset of, okay, this is hard, but I want to grow. I want to be the best version of me. And like you said, you want to be the superhero of your life.
Mm, mm.
And, prior to that, you touched on, and this is a great gateway for my last question, by the way, because you touched on how people were just wired to choose the easiest options without pain, etc. Now, I'd like to know what your thoughts are on Ozempic. It's a hot topic.
It is a bit of a hot topic. It hasn't quite reached Australia yet. It's just not as accessible for us.
Interesting.
So it's not something that we're kind of really dealing with. I know there are some people who are using it, but you have to get a prescription and it's quite expensive. My thoughts on Ozempic are it's not being used correctly. It's being used in far higher doses than is necessary. And Ozempic is only as good as the lifestyle that helps maintain it. So, the interesting thing when you think about weight loss and maintaining weight loss is that it's two different systems. The way you lose weight is you control the quantity of your food. The way you maintain it is through your lifestyle. So if you can't lose weight, you're eating too much. Your food quantity is the problem. If you can't maintain the weight loss, your lifestyle is the problem. And it is still true for Ozempic. So if you're not out building muscle, if you're not out eating whole foods, if you're not creating a lifestyle that supports the body that you want, when you come off Ozempic, or when you max out the dose and it's no longer effective, which is what they're observing, then what? Then like you kind of, it's a stalemate, you're stuck again. So there has to be a complement of lifestyle with medication. And I recommend, and again, I'm not the expert on Ozempic, but based on the conversations I've had, it's much smaller doses to support the changes that you're trying to make, while not creating such a lack of hunger that you just stop eating. So you're mitigating loss of muscle, and you're able to perform. You're able to train and move and feel good. So I think that there has to be maybe a bit of a revision of how people are using it, how doctors are prescribing it. And then also, it's the same problem with the medical field, like looking at lifestyle, and being like, man, like go lift weights 3 times a week, go and start walking every day. And then like, do you know how to cook? Do you know what different proteins to use? Do you know what nutrients are in food and how to get a diversity of fruit and veg? Like some of those basic things. It's like, if people can get Ozempic faster than they can learn to cook, like we have a problem. so it's like, well, I think that there's a lot of people that will make incredible changes in their life because of Ozempic, and it might be the beginning of a journey that will produce a much healthier person. Will there be some people that get stuck with Ozempic and get to the end of the line and haven't got any muscle, have a shitty metabolism, aren't eating enough food, the weight loss stalls, and then they eventually regain it back? There will be some of those people. Ozempic is kind of like weight loss, but just accelerated. So I don't think that it's going to, be permanent. In the same way that weight loss, whether you do it slow or fast, is never permanent. You have to then maintain it, and that comes down to your lifestyle.
I do think that the way most people are using it is very much a band-aid. I'm going to look better now, and I'm just going to keep going until I can't anymore. And I think the issue with that is a lack of education. Not that they're not educated, it's that we have not been educated on science and how nutrition works, what your body needs on a chemistry level, right? Like no, we are not taught that at school. So I feel like it's like low hanging fruit. You see Ozempic, oh, this is going to be easy. I'll take it, right? I'll worry about the effects later. And I wish, and I'm trying to do this somehow through growth to mindset. I wish kids were educated on what their body needs in order, because I think that would really be like, oh, I'm not going to take this. I don't need it. I got this, right? I can do this by myself because I know what my body needs. But then, of course, there are lots of cases, like you said, that it might kickstart the whole process where they do take Ozempic in a certain dose that's right for them, and then they understand that there has to be a lifestyle change. And of course, it might save people, right? Because maybe they're on a bad path now, and if they continue living the lifestyle that they're currently living, then later on they'll have issues, and Ozempic might be the start of them living a healthier life. So I like that you mentioned that, because I agree with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Kate.
Yeah, of
Thank you
course.
for taking each question with lots of, I mean, you're just so chill. A lot of these are tough questions, and I love that you had answers for both, and you knew that it can be nuanced. And I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, well, great questions, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Kate.